Welcome to Reality of the Rose with your host, Natalie Sprink.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 205 of Reality of the Rose. I'm your host, Natalie Sprink. Well, thanks for joining me once again. This is Thanksgiving week, so hope you all have a lot to be thankful for. Even if you think you don't, I bet if you really put your mind to it, you can think of some stuff that you're thankful for, because I think we're all guilty of getting into that rut where we feel stressed, where we feel the weight of whatever we're dealing with on our shoulders, and we just have to sit back, think about it, pray about it, and look for the little things to be thankful for. Like my Elphaba Awala, I'm thankful for that. I also have Glinda. And speaking of that, nice segue, I'm going to be today going over, I went to see Wicked for Good. It started Friday night. I saw it Friday night with some friends, and none of them have seen Wicked, like the musical Wicked. They saw the first movie edition, but none of them had seen it. So it was kind of fun to see it with people who didn't know how it ended. So I'm going to be going over my thoughts on Wicked for Good. So, I guess spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about things that happen in the movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, you don't want to be spoiled, so to speak. I don't think I could spoil it though, because you just have to see it to even really appreciate it or feel it or get the full vibe anyway. But I'm also going to be first going over Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I have watched the whole season 3. I was going to go over it in 2 parts. I was going to go over the first 5 episodes and then on this podcast, and then the second 5 episodes on another podcast. But I realized that I don't really recall, because I finished watching it actually last weekend. So I'm hoping I can recall all the things I wanted to recall. I made a few notes, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to decipher oh, this all ended with season 5, because I watched it all at once and I wouldn't know, I know where sort of the storylines ended. And I know I probably wouldn't be able to accurately just keep it to the first 5 episodes and then the last 5 episodes. So I'm going to talk about it all at once. I'm just going to kind of take each girl at a time, or each sort of storyline at a time, as I give my thoughts on that. I may also, if I haven't gone over time, which I have a feeling I will with both of those things, but I've also watched the full season of the new Selling the OC. Selling the OC and Selling Sunset have both come out. They came out at the same time. I opted to watch the OC first, and I am currently watching Selling Sunset now. Honestly, if I don't get to it, if I've had to tell you to watch one of them, man, I don't know. That's hard, because I at first started watching OC because I watched the first episode of each, and whichever I was more intrigued by, that's the one I watched the full season first. And that happened with OC. But as Selling Sunset has gone on, I actually only have about 3 episodes left with that. That got really good too. But I would say they're very equal. If you've not ever watched Selling the OC, you need to give it a chance. I really, really like that one. I'm also really anxious, and I hope they still do Selling the City, which is the version in New York. And actually, funny I say that, on the last episode that I watched for Selling Sunset, 3 girls from Selling the City, are you confused yet? Came to Selling Sunset. They did a crossover, because they were wanting to buy a house for one of their New York clients in LA. So my guess is maybe they will have that on. I really, really enjoyed that one. I might have enjoyed that one the most. But anyway, those are both, I really enjoy those. Love, love, love watching their outfits. I feel like the OC is a little bit also more realistic and down to earth. What do I mean by that? I feel like the way they dress to show their houses, which I love watching their outfits, either one, Selling Sunset, their outfits get to be a little bit more outrageous. Things that you can't imagine that your realtor would actually wear. It's a bit like that on OC as well, but not quite so much. I also feel like they're maybe not quite as aware of the cameras on OC as Selling Sunset is. Sometimes I feel like they're super aware of the cameras, and I don't know, sometimes watch what they say, sometimes don't. But yeah, that's that. So I'm getting into that more than I am what I plan on. Okay, so let's start with Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I think I'm going to just kind of go over like the whole Jesse, Mariano, and Demi storyline. So basically the last season, season 2 ends where Mariano, right? Mariano tells Layla that he has been having an affair with Jesse. The whole season 2, there was speculation about Jesse and Demi and Mariano, like maybe have something going on when they all did not after the villa. Was that what it's called? After the villa? Party at the villa? I don't know. Some Vanderpump Rules Lisa Vanderpump show that I did not watch that was on Hulu, but the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives made an appearance. Anyway, so because Demi and Mariano really were flirting a lot, but we find out at the end that he says Jesse and he had sex and that they had an affair. So bring us to season 3. And basically the gist of what we learn is that Jesse did have an affair with Mariano. She does not deny that. She totally admits it. But we find out that about 2 weeks into it, it only lasted for about 2 weeks. And as soon as it was over, she told Jordan. Jordan is Jesse's husband, about it. So he knew about it. They knew about it. They decided they were just going to keep it a total secret. Hang on, stop there for a second. I also would like to interject here that I also have listened to the podcast on Nick Vile's podcast where Jesse was interviewed by them. This week, they're actually going to air their interview with Jordan. So I don't know the things that he said, but things I talk about will I'm sure also have information that she gave on that podcast that maybe was not on the show. So that's all going to kind of be like, I'll talk about that like all in one. You know, some of this stuff may have not actually been on the show because she may have just said it on the podcast. But either way, I just wanted to let you know that also is very, very good interview to go see. It was like their last Wednesday Digging Deeper show. So like, when was that? November 12th or something. Anyway, it's a really good interview. Also tune in for Jordan's this week. But okay. So, but they had decided apparently together, this is something I learned on the podcast, that they were not going to tell anybody. Nobody was going to know. But if somehow something came out about it, they had agreed to say that they were currently separated and that this happened when they were like separated. They were on a break, so to speak. But we learn on the podcast, and this is something they did not reveal during the season, but we learn on the podcast that they actually were never on a break. They were together when she got with Mariano and they had their affair. They actually were not on a break. Anyway, she told Jordan and they were working through things. But then when Mariano told Layla went to Jesse, and then Jesse went to Jordan. I guess is when they knew they had to come clean on the show about it so that they could at least control the narrative and the background as best they could and tell their part of the story. So Jesse says that they only kissed twice and they never had sex. they actually had then like an emotional affair, were primarily via text, where, you know, they were flirty, they had flirtatious talk, they talked about, you know, what ifs kind of thing, and they had this emotional affair. But after a period of time, she was just like, what am I doing? I can't do this. I'm married, I have kids, I have to handle this. Like, I can't do this. So she went to Jordan, told him, and they decided they were going to work through it. Well, then as the show progresses, we find out that, you know, not that it's an excuse, but that Jesse was being emotionally abused by Jordan prior to this. And when they first got together, he was like this great partner, this, you know, great husband, this great father, all these things. But that as time went on, he started to just be more critical of her. He would call her names, he would sort of degrade her. She said on the podcast that he would call her the bitch and the C word and things like that. Um, Keep in mind, Jesse was a self-made millionaire before the show even started. So she's like, was not in it for anything with Jordan, like with the money. She's self-made, all of that. And she made her money on her boutiques or her salons. And she tells that whole story too. I won't necessarily get into that, but that was really interesting to me too, how that all started. But so she is like this, you know, by all means has the ability to be on her own and to just not need a man, you know, not to support her financially, especially, but especially if he's verbally abusing her. Now, again, so this is my opinion. I don't think that that's an excuse, but personally, I can see how that could happen. Um, she finds someone that is paying attention to her, that is complimenting her, that finds her interesting, that finds her funny, and she basically says all of this is too, both on the podcast and on the show. And so when this happened, she was like at a low with her and Jordan. And so this wasn't happening out of nowhere. It wasn't happening sort of like on a whim for no reason, like, you know, out of the blue kind of thing for her. It was what probably happens a lot with affairs, that they're not getting their needs met in their marriage, and so they go outside of the marriage. And so that is what happened. So as the show progresses, we see that her and Jordan then like decide to start working on it in their marriage. They start both going to therapy, both individually and together. But they also they actually did separate, where she would stay 2 days at a hotel, then he would stay 2 days at a hotel. So they weren't living together, but one of them was always at the home with their kids. She talks about how they handled that with the kids, and how one of their kids is old enough to know that wasn't quite right, but the other two are pretty young and they could come up with things to tell them. But people, so she did not know how to, well, let's see, let me back up here. So Demi, Mariano comes out with that Demi is the one that encouraged him to say that they slept together. And Demi denies that. So, okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. When the show starts, all the girls are there and filming except for Whitney and Demi. We learn at the very beginning of the episodes of this season 3 that Demi and Whitney have decided not to film. For their own reasons, because of contract issues, blah, 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 blah. So then about 4 episodes in or so, 4 or 5 episodes in, there's this influencer party and Demi is going to be there. And at this party, she, I guess, hasn't agreed to start filming yet, or still was on the no film thing. So all the other girls had their own cameras ready, because I guess at that point the cameras couldn't show up because Demi didn't want to fit. This is how I understood it. Wasn't like hadn't signed a contract to film, so I guess the cameras couldn't be there. I don't know why they couldn't just cut her out, but at least the girls were talking about having their own phones there. Taylor said her mom and sister were there, so they were going to get like their own footage of the stuff that went down at this party. So, and you could tell the footage wasn't like camera footage, it was like phone footage. But anyway, so at this party, Layla confronts Demi, and she was like, look, because, like, we're friends, but I don't know what to believe, because Jesse has admitted that they had this affair, but she said they did not have sex. And Mariano said that you told him to say that they had sex. And so, of course, she denies that, but says that, like, I guess claims that Mariano told her they had sex. I don't exactly know how she knew. But then there was this really bitter back and forth between Jesse and Demi, like screaming at each other from across the room, where Demi simulates like with her hands down by her crotch saying, "How is sex with Mariano twice?" Like, can you imagine being at this party with all these influencers and yelling that across the room? And Jesse's yelling back, you don't have anything, you've no idea what happened, blah, 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 blah. And they're screaming at each other. It's like this whole thing. So then Jesse is on a mission to try and somehow prove that they did not have sex. And I truly believe that they didn't have sex. And I guess she did kind of prove it two ways. So she sets up this lie detector test that both her and Mariano were supposed to take. And they did. They both took this lie detector test. There was some event somewhere, too, where all the girls were. And Mariano came to this event, and this is where they had the lie detector girl come to. So they took this lie detector test. They're all sitting together, and all of the results come back while they're all together at dinner, including Mariano. Well, in the meantime, Jordan finds out, well, actually from Jesse, that, she invited him to dinner. Well, he gets really pissed that she invited him to dinner. And I mean, rightly so. At this point, we're just like, why would you do that? You had an affair with him. Your husband's already said, why would you invite him to dinner? Well, her excuse is, it's with all the girls. We have to find out the results together anyway. So I invited him. So when you watch back on the show, you also see that like they meet up before they do the lie detector test, and they are very friendly with each other. He compliments her on how beautiful she is. She feels kind of like mildly flirty with him. He brings her flowers. She happily accepts them. She doesn't like reject them or be like, you need to stop. And when you watch the show, you're kind of like, why is she acting like this? I mean, this is not a good look to with a guy that you had the affair with, knowing you're on camera, your husband would be pissed, blah, 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 blah. Why is she acting like this towards him and not, like putting her distance up, setting boundaries, saying, I'm not talking to you, but, we're going to figure this out as far as the lie detector test. But she didn't act that way. She was almost like a little giddy around him. So on the podcast, she says she was this way towards him because she was really a little bit manipulating the situation, because she needed him to be sort of on her side, in a good mood. She didn't want to push him away or be a bitch to him, because she needed him basically to come through for her with this lie detector test, so that was her explanation for sort of acting that way. So anyway, they get back the test. It came back, like the test results came back that neither one of them was lying about having sex. So like that proved that. We also see though later in the show, and this part I thought was like not a very good taste either. So they were again at some like function, some event. And she said, Jesse says, even despite the lie detector test, I can even prove with these text messages that I have back and forth with Mariano and I that we didn't, because, and then, so she was sitting at the table, I think it was with Miranda, maybe Taylor, and I don't know who was at the table with her, but they were standing there at this table and she was reading the text messages, and they were obviously not obviously, but this was during the affair. So they were very flirty, very like sexually, um, like, what's the word? Like tinged with, sexual tension in the text. But behind her is Jordan with a couple other the guys at their own table, and they kept showing like Jordan walking back and forth past their table. Now, obviously, they can do whatever they want to in an edit. The way the edit made it look was that he could, like, he'd walk by, and as he was walking by, he could hear her reading these text messages. Now, who knows? Maybe it was super loud in there and he never actually heard what she said, but they made it seem like that, But they were like, yeah, I really wish, like, maybe someday. This isn't what they said, but the essence of them was maybe someday if we have sex, yeah, I'd like to know what that's like. I often think about what that would be like with you. You think we'll ever find out? I don't know. So, but the implication then is, I don't know what it's like to have sex with you, so wonder what it would be like. So, like in a kind of reverse way, that was her proof that they didn't have sex. Okay. But anyway, it feels very icky that she's reading those out loud. I mean, she was acknowledging as she was reading those, like, oh my God, I can't believe that, like, I'm reading this out loud, that this is what the stuff I said. This is so embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's that. So then, but as this goes on, then it kind of more is starting to focus on, because now it was kind of like we have it out of the way that they did not have sex. But we then move on to her and Jordan as being like, their marriage, and, her focusing a lot more than on the, the verbal abuse and the emotional abuse that she suffered because of him. She talks a lot about how, after they separated and they started attending therapy, that she definitely saw improvements in him. But, I don't know. I think after all of the abuse, that she just doesn't fully trust him, doesn't trust that, maybe her feelings have changed about him, doesn't completely trust that he won't go backwards and start doing it again. Like he would use, like, even on the show, we saw an example of that, because he said something to her. When they showed a fight that they had, he was saying something like, what are you going to tell? Can't believe you're doing this on camera. This is on camera. What are your kids going to say someday when they see this? And she said, well, I'm going to sit them down and I'm going to explain to them what I did, why it was wrong, how I heard it, how I'm taking accountability. Oh, so what you're going to take your son and you're going to tell him I slept with this guy. And he was like real, like, not that the things that he was feeling aren't valid, but like just the way he talked to her, it was definitely not a like productive conversation. And if a guy is talking like that to her in that moment, chances are that he has definitely spoken to her that way before. So obviously that is its own issue in their marriage as well. As of the conversation on the podcast, which was obviously like real time, they're still together. They're still working on it. I'm anxious to hear Jordan's side, but she couldn't say 100% whether they, would stay together or not. They were just basically taking it day by day, week by week. So there's that part of it. Okay, so next let's do the Demi part. So after they had that fight at that event, Demi decides that she wants to start filming again, because she can see that if she doesn't, that the other girls are going to like definitely make her look bad, definitely have their side of the story. And basically all the girls are against Demi at this point, except for Whitney, but we haven't seen anything from Whitney yet. But they obviously would set the tone. So she wants to make sure she tells her side of it. So she decides to start filming again. And besides that, on the show, they're going to start doing press for season 2 of the show, and they're going to all be together anyway. So she decides to film. Her storyline was like, then beyond this whole, like, did she not spread these, like, tell Mariano to act this way, or to say he had sex with Jesse. Like, I guess we're never going to know really the truth about that. But then her sort of storyline on this was like her claiming sexual assault by both Mariano and by Chase, who is Miranda's ex-husband from the previous season. If you recall, if you watched it the previous season, there was talk of, or at this Halloween party, there was whatever, this argument went down and Chase walked past Demi and like touched her hip and said, "Where's your husband?" or something like that. And like she went back and told who's her husband? Um Brett. Brett, that Chase put his hands on her, and then they progressed to have this big fight out in the yard. That is still a topic that we're talking about in season 3. Also, she is saying that Mariano, and she never will say what he did, it was sometime while they were Beyond the Villa. That's what that show was called, I think. Whatever. While they were on that show with Beyond the Villa, because Demi was on that show too, that they were apparently very, very flirty. We learned that in season 2. But she says that he touched her unwantingly, and so is calling it sexual assault. But in the meantime, apparently, like after that apparently happened, Mariano has all these texts from her back and forth that were extremely flirty, extremely suggestive sexually, like definitely not something that you're just going to be texting to someone. Mind you, she's married. That when you're married, you should not be texting the things she was texting. She claims that Brett knew everything there was to know between her and Mariano, saw all their text exchanges, and was fine with it. But when they showed the texts, and the girls had such an issue with how flirty they were, and if he sexually assaulted you, why would you speak with him that way afterwards? Why wouldn't you just say, "Screw you, you assaulted me, I'm like not ever speaking to you again," which I kind of agree with, or I do agree with. Her reasoning is that she didn't want him to come out to the public with his accusations that they like had an affair, had sex, kiss. I think he is saying that they kissed, and she's denying all that. So she didn't want him coming out with that, having to deal with that. So she says she was just appeasing him basically by flirting with him in the texts, and that Brett knew all about this. Whatever. So kind of her, like, the thing that was focused on around her a lot is, like, those are very big accusations to put forth that you were sexually assaulted. It's such a fine line because you have women who do this and use that phrase sort of flippantly and not, don't have anything to back it up. The thing of it is that we did get it on camera of Chase, like I had to rewind it. I remember I had to rewind it like 3 or 4 times to see if he even touched her, because it wasn't like he pushed her shoulder. It wasn't like he grabbed her arm. It wasn't like he grabbed her shoulder. He didn't grab her at all. He like touched her hip and said, "Where's your husband?" In my mind, that's not sexual assault. Yeah, she didn't ask for it, but I mean, come on, give me a break. You can't. I just think it's a really bad look, because for the person that did it, if they would actually get labeled as someone who has committed sexual assault, it's also irresponsible, because then, as the girls talk about later in the show, it's such a fine line, because then also what that does is not only really detrimental to the guy you're accusing of that did it, but it's also like, because what we saw on the show to me wasn't sexual assault, that also makes it harder for the women who do claim sexual assault and actually were sexually assaulted to have people believe them, because we have so many stories of women who abuse that term. and the girls were trying to get that across to her, and like she would not hear it. Her really only ally besides Whitney was Layla, or not Layla, Michaela. She was kind of on her side. And when they were doing press, that got brought up, and Demi used the term shove, as what Chase did to her during the Halloween party. And Miranda was like that's a big leap from like touching you to shoving you. And she said, I was there. He did not shove you. Plus, mind you, Chase is Michaela's ex-husband, and she has a child with him, I believe. And so she's like, look, I know he's not innocent, but he did not. That's a dangerous thing to say, is that he sexually assaulted you. And so they kind of got into it. So then Demi, she was like mainly on Demi's side, but after that, she got really pissed off, and Demi would not back down about it and was like, well, I don't know what term to use. I'm just like, I don't know. How else do you say that? Touch? I don't know. And she's like, yeah, but you don't just go from like touch to shove. So anyway, I don't know. I tend to be on the girls' side on this, because I think that Demi just, I don't know. The show at least makes her come off as just never being wrong, never taking absolutely any accountability in anything. It's always her that is being wronged. And she just comes at you if you did, what she perceives as done something to you. Mariano swore that she told him to say that. We'll never know the truth about that. But if she did do that, she of course denies that. I don't know. That was sort of Demi's narrative during this season, and I don't know. I just don't like her. I don't know. We'll see how the next season goes. Let's talk about Whitney now. She wasn't on probably the first half of the season. Then she decides to come on, and she comes on and is very upfront with us that she's coming on and wanting to start filming only because she learned that by filming, she would get an audition to be on Dancing with the Stars. She does not make that a secret to us in her ITMs, to the viewer, or to the girls after a certain point. And I don't know, it's so weird because I know that the show villainizes Whitney. The girls don't like Whitney, but and she can be a little scathing in her interviews, her ITMs to us. I don't know what else to call them. I guess they call them interviews, behind the scene interviews, whatever. But God, there's like a part of me that likes Whitney. I think she's funny. I kind of like her little jabs that she gets in during her interviews. I think she's funny. I have to appreciate a little bit of the honesty with her saying that she's coming on the show to try out for Dancing with the Stars. Like, I can't help it. I kind of think that like she's owning it. That's what we want everyone to do, is like to own the stuff, not to lie about it and not to make themselves look better, but just to own it and take accountability. And I mean, she just that's like one of the first things she says when she started filming is that. So I just have to appreciate Whitney. I think I also gained an appreciation for her by watching her on Dancing with the Stars, because as we know, her and Jen both are on Dancing with the Stars, were on Dancing with the Stars. Also, spoiler alert, if haven't seen this yet, Whitney got eliminated during the semifinals. So, and ironically, it's when the season came out, and I cannot help but think that that was to her detriment, in the fact that she got eliminated the week that it was found out that she only joined the cast again to get on the show. I kind of hate that for her, because I really enjoy watching her. She was an amazing dancer, but she's also among a bunch of other amazing dancers. The ones that are left are all very, very good as well. But I couldn't help, I think, just kind of a bit of a fan of Whitney's, cheering for her, and hoping maybe she won. But Jen got eliminated a few weeks ago. But so, it's a bit ironic that the week that she got eliminated is the week that came out. So kind of sucks for her. But I think that I also kind of became a fan of her. I kind of like watching them off of the show as well, in like this context. Not that we learn that much about Whitney watching Dancing with the Stars, But, you watch her with her partner, you watch her like afterwards when the judges are talking to her, and then when Juliana and she's getting her scores and things like that. And just from those little bits and pieces, I just learned to like her and just really liked her as a dancer too. So also her and Taylor also let me sorry her she also got vulnerable definitely a couple different times during the show itself too with the other girls, and got brought to tears by like how this has been really hard with her, not for her, not people not liking her and Michaela being really, really at odds because they used to be best friends. And she broke down a couple times on the show, and it felt very authentic when she did. Also, when they were on a press on the one when they were on their press tour, her and Taylor both went on to the Jimmy Kimmel show together, and they had a very sort of fun exchange where Taylor had told her what she thought of her, and her coming on the show only for Dancing with the Stars. But then because Taylor was kind of having her own issue, which I'll talk about in a minute, Whitney was kind of there for her and kind of supporting her. And it was a real fun, cute exchange. I have to say that I always am Team Taylor. I really am. And I'm not just saying that because she's sort of the star of the show or because she's going to be the Bachelorette. I've said this already before when I've talked about the show before. I just think that she is the most authentic person. Not that they're not all very authentic, but she does not hesitate to take accountability. She does not jump on bandwagons when everyone else is saying X. She is not afraid to say Z. And she doesn't even like, a lot of them will say it in the moment, like, oh, I'll agree with her because I'm here with her, but then behind the scenes say something else. She won't even do that. She'll just say, no, I don't, that's not what I think. I think you guys are wrong in this, and this is why. I just like what she brings to the table for the show. And I thought the exchange with her and Whitney, what she told her is, look, I don't like some of the things that you've done, but I can't help it. I like you as a person. And that's exactly the way I feel. And so I kind of liked what their interaction together. So yeah, that's Whitney. Let's see. Michaela. Her and Macy got a lot of airtime, and Jesse, but the three of them got a lot of airtime. Her and Macy seem to be always sort of like having their opinions about everybody else's issues. And I don't necessarily have an opinion about that. I like watching them both on camera, and I like both of them. But the topic and the issue that was Michaela's and Michaela's alone was her struggle with her abuse, sexual abuse when she was young. And on the show, on this season, she goes into it a lot about that again, and her struggling with that again, and her getting therapy about that, but specifically about how it affects her and her sexual relationship with Jace, who is her husband. And I mean, he to me seems like the absolute sweetest guy in the history of guys. Like, I believe I like him the most of all the dad talk guys. I think he seems so humble. He just seems like a sweet guy. He seems so supportive of her. I just enjoy watching him so much. But she actually gets pissed off at him when they are all at Stagecoach because he got drunk, and he was being obnoxious. He was, but he was definitely being a drunk obnoxious. And you could tell that, I don't know, I just felt it. I felt it was like Michaela's way of being like, I know I'm not having sex with you that much. I feel horrible about it, but like, I have an excuse to be mad at you now because you're drunk and acting like an idiot. So she was kind of being a bitch to him. She was. And I thought, for a stupid reason. I mean, whatever. He's drunk. He doesn't know any better. But that was very apparent to me that that's what was going on with her at the time. But anyway, she goes to this EMDR therapy. That's some kind of therapy that has to do with your eyes. They showed a little bit of it where you follow the therapist's finger back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then you talk about your trauma. I don't know. It was very vague, but it was some kind of therapy that is supposed to be very successful. And he was really happy that she was going to be, doing this therapy. But also at Stagecoach, after, like, I can't remember if it was before or after she got mad at him, but they definitely tensions were high. They talked about going to the hot tub. It seemed like she was like, oh, I'm going to, like, they didn't have their kids with them. It felt like he was maybe going to get laid. And then, I don't know, they got to the hot tub. The hot tub was cold. So they were going to do this, and that didn't work for whatever reason. Then the mood was ruined. And so she just wanted to go to bed, and he got kind of upset by that and was like, he said in an interview that it makes him feel like he's not loved, like he's not wanted, and it just hurts him and it's hard for him. And like, I have to say that it was really hard to know whose side to be on, because I really could feel, I can't feel her pain because I don't know what it's like, but that the reason she struggles with sex is for obvious reasons, and that she's trying her hardest. But then I can see why it's very hard for him to, like, be supportive up to a certain extent. And then what do you do? But I felt like that was a really, really raw topic to talk about and be open with on the show, like in front of cameras, in front of an audience. I really admire the both of them for doing that, because I'm sure that they are helping and making a lot of people feel like they aren't alone in this kind of struggle. I feel very blessed to say I have no idea what it's like, but I really, really, like, appreciate and admire her for being so open with this whole topic on the show. They show that Macy suffers not from a childhood trauma of sexual abuse, but I guess she was abused in a past relationship, both physically and sexually and mentally. And so her abuses are real as well. And she's gone through the same thing with her sex life with her husband. But I guess apparently she's worked through that and was trying to support Michaela in that journey as well. So kind of watching their friendship, I just really like think it's fun watching them together, watching them being goofy together, watching them be like there for each other, cry together. It really truly seems like a best friendship, and I just enjoy watching the two of them. I'm trying to think. I don't know that Macy really had uh, a strong storyline of her own, unless I'm completely forgetting what it was. And if I'm forgetting, then apparently it's not that strong. But I feel like she's almost like the narrator. And if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of the same thing. She had a storyline on the last show about her ex-boyfriend who was killed in a car accident. But they were like, whatever. And so that was, but I don't really, that was the last season, but this season it felt like she was just kind of there as support for people, or to give her sort of opinions on things with everyone else's storylines. Something I'm going to interject here is another reason that I really love this show is because of, like, the theme of just casual, right? So what I mean by that is, every Real Housewives I watch, every, like, Southern Charm, not so much Summer House really, but especially the Housewives shows, even Bachelor, Bachelorette, like, they're all always primped and, like, are pretty much always full makeup. Pretty much full makeup, dressed to the nines. I would be too if I was on a reality show. But this is so different, because all of the time, unless they're at an event, like an influencer event or a mom talk event, then they come in glam. But even then, it's not like full on, like, dripping in labels type of glam. It just seems like real girl glam. I know they all have to be super wealthy by now, but it doesn't feel that way. And maybe that's why the show is like so subtly appreciated by people, because they feel like us, really. Like, they literally wear sweats all the time. Like, occasionally they're wearing jeans, but they don't even wear jeans that much, you know? Like, they're wearing sweats and sweat sets and sweats and sweatpants and sweatshirts all the time. So very, very often they don't wear any makeup either at all. They haven't had hair and glam done. They are just their raw, authentic selves. Their hairs are up in clips. Their hairs are in messy ponytails. And I just think that is so real. And again, even when they do have events, you can tell and they show them in glam when they're doing their press tours and things like that. But they aren't dripping in diamonds. They're not dripping in jewelry. They don't have, like, Oscar worthy dresses on. They're just kind of like very simple. And there's just something I very much appreciate that. That being said, as a side note, I don't necessarily really like their style. I don't like their choices in dresses when they do go to events. They're just not my style. They wear a lot of, like, if they're not wearing sweats, they wear a lot of crop tops. That's not me, and that's not just because of my age. Maybe it is, but it just feels like a very one path road with them. They're either in sweats and crop tops, crop tops, or nothing, or they're like dressed up for their events. So, like, they don't have my personal style. I don't really like how necessarily any of them dress. I never go, oh my God, I love her outfit. I very rarely say that out loud to myself. But I very much appreciate it. And I very much appreciate their casualness and real conversations. I don't ever feel like they're super aware of the cameras. I feel like the conversations I'm watching and listening to are conversations exactly like they would have if there was no cameras there. Like, again, like, the difference would be like selling Sunset or selling the OC. Like, I feel like the conversations that are had on those shows are very not scripted, but they know what they want to say because the cameras are there, except when they're in fights. But like on this show, I feel like every conversation they have is so real and true. So it's, again, something I really, really like about this show. Okay, so now Taylor. Oh, real quick with Layla, she was kind of the same way. I don't know that she had a really strong storyline of herself. The one storyline I did like about hers was her issue with her hair, and how her hair is getting sort of ruined by putting the extensions in that she uses. And so she was given the advice that, like, you probably know that you need to go someone that specializes in your hair texture. Excuse me. And so because she goes to Jessie. And so, Layla researched it and found a woman to go to who specializes in her hair type. And whatever. So she went there, and the girl confirmed to her that, yes, your hair is getting ruined because you have to, for hair sorry, I can't spit this out. For her type of hair, you have to do extensions in a completely different way. And so she sort of explained it on the show and put it in. It did. It looked so much better. And she was hoping that Jessie wouldn't notice it, because she didn't tell Jessie she was going to do it. She just went and did it because Jessie was going through all this stuff with Jordan. So she didn't like want to put more on her plate. But they went to like this picnic, and Jessie did notice. And so she kind of pulled her aside, and she was like, your hair looks longer. She goes, did you do something different? And so she just came clean and told her. And I really appreciated that Jessie was like completely understanding of it. She was like, I'll admit that I, nor a lot of the girls at my salons, like, have really done a lot of research on Black women's hair. And I don't, I'll just admit that. And I need to do more research and more studying on that and get my girls more up on that. And so she was like super supportive of it and said, like, don't ever be scared to tell me that again, because I completely and totally understand. And I think your hair looks great and blah, 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 blah. And was even asking, like, what did she do? And let me look and see. And like, oh, that's so interesting. So I kind of thought that was really fun. But then Taylor. So Taylor also didn't really have her main storyline on this show was her with Dakota and her back and forth with him. And the first part of the show, up to and including Stagecoach, was about how her and Dakota still had this like on and off relationship. Like they're not together, but they'll have sex. And at Stagecoach, they were like obviously together. They were holding hands together. They admitted that she got pissed at him when he was flirting with another girl. She got totally pissed at him and was completely blowing him off and being a bitch to him. And that night they ended up having sex. And then the next day they were like all over each other, holding hands, the whole thing. I don't know how in real time, how much later it was, but she found out that a family friend of theirs, like a friend that's her mom's friend, a woman that comes to their family Christmases or any family event they have, she's always there, always present, that her and Dakota like hooked up. And we didn't know really what that meant exactly. We heard like I think Jordan heard it, told Jesse, and she said, I don't care if Dakota doesn't tell her and is upfront with her by, this time, I'm going to tell her. Well, Dakota did come clean with her and told her, but it was kind of a thing that apparently after he and Taylor broke up, that she was like there for him, told him if you need someone to talk to, you can come over. I guess she sent him a picture of herself in a bikini. Like it was claimed that there was only one picture, but apparently, I don't know who said who, but other people heard that there was numerous pictures sent back and forth between them, and that they scheduled to meet up even because they were like, hey, we're flirting a lot via text, let's meet up. And Taylor hears about this then after she thinks that maybe they might even be getting back together then. And she was so mad, so pissed off at him. She then told her family about it. Her mom was so beside herself, pissed off. This all came out when they were doing press for the season 2. And she like didn't even want to go to press because she was just so upset by this. They end up showing Taylor like going to her parents' house, and they called this woman and called her out on all this stuff, and she denied it. She said, we absolutely never had sex. Taylor does not believe it. The mom does not believe it. They brought that picture up that she sent. She was like, that was completely innocent. It didn't mean anything. I didn't send it for that reason. They don't believe her. She says, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have sent it, whatever. Anyway, so at this point, Taylor has completely lost trust then in Dakota. She's so upset by it because she was like, this is like what? I don't know, the 4th or 5th time this has kind of happened with him, like flirting with someone else, whatever. So she's like had enough. What they didn't cover in this season is her being asked to be on The Bachelorette. I really, really thought that's how the season was going to end. It did not. The season ends with, after this has all happened, I don't know how much later it was, but they show Taylor meeting up with Chase at a restaurant, just the two of them. And I guess Chase is the one, like when the whole swinger scandal came out, like in season 1, I like I'm fuzzy on the details, but I guess Chase is the one that she like cheated with on her husband at that time. Because that kind of comes up in their conversation then, and they kind of are flirting about that and a little bit implying like, I wonder what would have happened kind of stuff. And he asks her like if he could kiss her, basically. Like, you want to try it again to kiss? Or I don't know exactly. I can't remember the exact articulate exactly what they said back and forth, but it was very flirty. They went back to that time and we're kind of like reliving that a little bit. And that's how it ends, was him asking if she wanted to kiss. So like they didn't cover it all. Her being asked to be on The Bachelorette, they almost make it seem like, oh, okay, so for season 4, there's maybe going to be a storyline with her and Chase. Obviously, we know that's not true because she is on her Bachelorette journey as we speak. She is currently filming the show. The only thing I'm wondering is if they are going to have Chase show up on as one of the guys on The Bachelorette, and that we just don't know that yet. And that's why because obviously it's a choice to make that be the cliffhanger for season 3 of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So why would they end it that way, knowing that she is going to be the Bachelorette? I just thought that was so weird. And I just can't really wrap my head around or come up with another conclusion as to why they would have done that. Because to put an end to the season itself, besides that, on the last show, they also had this gathering with all the girls, including Demi and Whitney, and everyone is there. And I think it was it Macy and Whitney, I guess, that got together, that decided they were going to do this little activity where each one of them got up, and without anyone talking at all, that person had the floor and they could articulate on who they were sorry to and why. And each one of them did get up. And I thought the most sort of tear-jerking one was Whitney, who got up and apologized to Michaela. And like, it was a wholehearted apology. She was brought to tears, not just for that, but for other things as well, and was like authentically sorry. I have to say, then Michaela also got up and she got very emotional while she was standing up. She also told Whitney she was sorry. And in her interview to us, said she was like excited to see what the future held for the two of them. Because they used to be best friends. But all of them got up and gave their apologies. Then after they were done giving their apologies, they had this like doll, and they had this thing where like, if they had any beef left, like if you held the doll was the only time you could talk and you could still bring stuff up. So the girls all brought this up again to Demi on the sexual harassment thing, and why, if it was sexual harassment, did she still talk to him, blah, 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 blah. I actually think they cleared that all up, and not that they necessarily cleared it up or like 100% know what to believe or not believe, but they came to the conclusion that, like someone said it, I think maybe it was Whitney or Jesse, said, I don't know if I'll ever know the truth. You know, it's always going to kind of be a question in my mind, but because that's the case, I'm choosing to just move forward, because sometimes we just can't understand the things that people go through or why they do them, but they have their reasons, and it's not for me to necessarily understand and feel the same way, but it's their like right to like feel what they feel. And so they just kind of moved forward. Oh, I forgot, didn't cover Jen, but there really wasn't that much to cover with her, except just that she was going to be on Dancing with the Stars. And I don't know, I'm just going to skip her. But they all like kind of came together, and it was kind of like a happy ending, really. Probably the happiest of endings that we've had in the seasons, that they all, like Jesse and Demi, even hugged, and they were both really apologetic to each other, and that they missed each other and were sorry that they weren't there for each other, things like that. So I had this really good ending. And then so I guess what I'm saying is that it could have ended like that. That could have just been the ending. But the show chose to end it with Taylor and Chase. So I just can't help to think that there's something going to be worked into the Bachelorette plotline. But also, it still begs to question why they're not airing The Bachelorette until March 22nd. Yes, March 22nd. And it's a Sunday, which is also weird. But I guess that we don't know. But I don't know why they would make it a Sunday show. That seems so weird to me, because it feels like Sunday night is not really a good TV night for people to watch. But it makes me wonder if there's not going to be a season 4 released before The Bachelorette starts, because it just really shocked me that they did not cover the Bachelorette at all for Taylor. So it makes me think that they have to get in one more season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which I would think would be the news that a season 4 is going to be released would be out very, very soon, I would think. Like maybe that they'll release that in, say, like February or something, and that season's going to maybe begin with this whole Chase thing, and then why that's not going to work, but then go into her. Maybe they're even going to do a little bit of like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives with behind the scenes stuff of Bachelorette, but they can't give away the ending. I don't know. There's got to be something. There has to be a reason that it's not premiering in January at the normal time. There has to be a reason it's not premiering until March 22nd. And that's the only thing that makes sense in my head, that there's going to be a season 4 that covers a little bit more of this Bachelorette journey with Taylor in that season. So, all right. Okay, let me see how I am. Oh shit, I'm an hour in. Oh my God, I talked about it for an hour. Okay. Gonna be covering Wicked now. I just am gonna say, I guess, I'm not gonna go through the whole movie. I loved it. These are my opinions on it. A lot of people who did not know how Wicked ended have never seen the musical, which I went with Jody and her two of her daughters, Malia and Maddie, and none of them had seen Wicked on stage, so they did not know how Wicked ends. Obviously, I did. So for me, the ending and the way they did the ending for the movie was amazing. I loved how they came for full circle and tied the ending for this into the first movie, or like tied the first movie into this ending. Also, I loved all the little nuanced things that they included that were parts of Wizard of Oz, or parts of the musical, or just little things that, and I probably didn't catch many of them. The one I did not catch that I just saw on social media was and I'm so pissed at myself for not catching this, but I did not catch the very last scene is of them sitting in a field. They had kind of showed a flashback earlier in the movie, but they kind of went back to that flashback and showed Glinda whispering to Elphaba. And I didn't notice this then. I guess I did, but I just didn't put it together. But Glinda has this like little hood up, and she's whispering. And that is the Playbill cover for Wicked the musical, is of Glinda whispering to Elphaba. And they recreated that. And I just got goosebumps. I literally just got goosebumps because that is so cool. And I'm so mad I did not realize that until I saw it on social media. But that's how they ended it, which was amazing. It's hard to say I like either of the movies better, and I'm not going to even go that far to say I like one over the other, because I really didn't. And it's really mainly for the reason that the first one is just different, right? It's different because it's more upbeat. It's got personally, I prefer the songs from the musical in Act 1. So those were my favorite songs that were played in Act 1. Don't get me wrong, I love the music in Act 2 and the second movie for Good. But the songs are more upbeat. They're more ballady in Act 2, but in the first one, the songs are more upbeat. It was funnier. It was like more fun, just period. It was more lighthearted. Didn't really get dark until the end, really. It's just different vibes and different feels. And they really did a good job of portraying that obviously in the movie. It's also like that, obviously, on stage. But the second one it's just a different storyline. They get much deeper into the characters. They deal with their each with their issues. It just gets darker because of, the witch being wicked, and Glinda and her not being together much at all because, they're odds. Then we get Elphaba, like the whole obvious storyline of Fiyero going with Elphaba and leaving Glinda at the altar. Um, as an aside, like I know everyone thinks of that, but there's like two things in this show that I always am like, damn. One was in the first act at the very end when Elphaba is like realizing she has these powers and they sing Defy Gravity. There's that period of time where it almost feels like Glinda doesn't believe in her and she's like, go back to the wizard, like just give in, and you're like, God, have a backbone, why do you just and they sing about that to each other, like they each have their own versions of that, and why do you just succumb to that? Elphaba sings to Glinda. But you kind of are like to Glinda, like, geez, have a backbone. You're just gonna like, he's a complete scam and you want her just go to apologize for him? Like, gross. Why are you not encouraging her and telling her, like, yes, let's go off together and let's beat them, So you're kind of like pissed off a little bit, or I am, at Glinda for that. But then in the second half, you have the obvious, like, okay, so this is your best friend and you're just going to go off with her fiance that they almost just got married and literally sleep with him that same night? Like, what? That's terrible. That's awful. That is not something a best friend would do. Like, and then they argue about it later and she's like, you were never meant to be with him. Well, okay, but you don't have to sleep with him the very freaking night that he was just at the altar with her. Like, gross. I I'm trying not to like think of those two things because those are both things that like a best friend wouldn't do. What are you guys doing? Like, okay. Um I just had to say that because it bothers me. It has bothered me since the musical. It still bothers me. And I just try to accept it and move on and realize that, they both forgive each other and that they both are like friends forever and they both understand what the other went through. And it's just like this heartwarming moment that you cry about when they sing for good to each other. You just, oh God, it's just so good. Also, I know they slept together on the night that they were supposed to get married, that Glenn and him were supposed to get married, but like that scene and that song with Fiyero and Elphaba and the sex cardigan, the sex sweater, holy shit, like I don't know who thought of that, but they knew what they were doing, and that really, you felt that song, like it was effective. That was a very sexy song in the movie, for real. It was, even though it was with her best friend's fiance. So I really enjoyed that song. Oh, what is the song? Oh, No Good Deed. That was really good too. Like it was so intense and you just like felt her emotion. And that's when like the flying monkeys were like on her side and she was like just had enough. And that was such a good song too. I was like just moved by that as well. So this one was just so good for different reasons. And then just how they brought it together, obviously for good, was like the way they did that. The whole door scene, if you haven't seen it, you'll know when you do, but the whole door scene where Elphaba goes to hide Glinda because she was going to like take care of all of this and disappear for good, and them like each like resting their head on the door and crying with the other on the other side doing the same thing. Again, goosebumps. And it was like one of the best scenes I've seen in any movie. But apparently I heard that was ad-libbed, that was not in the script. They were not necessarily to do that at all. After they sang for good, Elphaba and her just did that. John Chu, that's his name, right? Said this in an interview, but he said he just didn't cut the scene and just let them go. And they did that. And they decided to keep it because it was like so obviously authentic because it wasn't scripted to do that way. So I thought that was like the coolest story too. But anyway, I loved it. I will say that I am not super crazy about the two new songs they added, No Place Like Home and A Girl in the Bubble. I could have done without both of those. Watching, like, hearing them, because I listened to it a bunch before the day of, I listened to that soundtrack like over and over and over and over again. And I thought by the time the movie came, I'd be like, oh, this song now, I love it. But A Girl in the Bubble was more fun for me to watch on screen while she was singing it and what they did with it, like in the movie. But No Place Like Home, I wasn't even as impressed with that in the movie. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I'm sure there's many that disagree with me, but I wish they would have made one of those songs a little bit more upbeat, maybe, because they're another two ballads and it's just so full of ballads already. But yeah, I guess that would be my only negative. But again, it's not like I hate the songs. It was fine. It was great. And they had their purpose in the movie. So, but yeah, I definitely am going to be seeing it multiple times, buying it, the whole thing. But I did love it. I absolutely loved it. I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. And yeah, that's it. It was like anticipating it. Now it's just over, kind of. Um, all right. Well, that's it. I'm not going to talk about selling LC because I am over time already, and I did not think it would take me that long to give my thoughts on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. But there you go. I don't know. Again, I will say again, I'm not sure what my schedule is going to be for the rest of this year. I'm going to try to get in some more episodes. Likely they'll be, with me recapping some shows. If I can get an interview, I'll do that and we'll see how that goes. But I just don't know. This time of year just gets so busy, not just for me, but for everyone else too. I can't usually get interviews. I talked about this last week. But I'll do my best. I'll let you know what's coming. And also, if you will be so kind as to go follow my social media, Reality of the Rose, go watch on YouTube, watch on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit subscribe, give me 5-star rating. Please review this episode. Follow my social media. Did I already say that? Whatever you can do to help support me, I would so much very appreciate it. It only takes you a few seconds, a minute at the most. And it means a lot to me. So until next time, happy Thanksgiving and be calm, be strong, be kind, be grateful. Bye.